Alright, so I'm going to be making a characterization of one of the main characters in Romeo and Juliet, and I've chosen to do this on Romeo. So what I'm going to be talking about is at first the basic facts we know about Romeo, and then I'm going to be talking about Romeo's views on love, and during this I'm going to be talking about what a Petrarchan lover is and how this kind of fits to what Romeo feels at first, and then I'll be looking at some of Romeo's lines on love in the first scene and compare these to what he says later on. Then I'll be talking about Romeo's development through the story and his tragic fall, and lastly, the historical context for this play. Alright, so what we basically know about Romeo is that he is the only son of Lord and Lady Montague, and the Montagues is a respected and wealthy family of Verona. This family suffers from a long-lasting, protracted feud between them and the other part of the wealth of Verona, which is the Capulets. Now, Romeo, he doesn't really feel the same hatred as his family does towards the Capulets. If we first look at Romeo's name, we immediately get the association to romance, which is very fitting to Romeo's character, which is a very romantic character. Now, if we look at Romeo in the first scene, we see this romance through how tormented he is by love. And this love is for Rosaline, and it is characterized as a Petrarchan love because Romeo's love is not reciprocated, and it's kind of a love where you feel this deep affection towards a person you don't really know, because Romeo doesn't really know Rosaline. And when you don't really know the person you love, it kind of becomes an idolization of love instead of loving the person. You kind of love the idea of being in love. And this is very fitting for Romeo because that's kind of what he feels in the beginning. So if we'll look at what Romeo says on love, here we can see it in Act 1, Scene 1, line 170, where he describes, "Why then, O brawling love, O loving hate, O anything of nothing first create," and if we jump to 174, "Feather of lead, bright smoke, cold fire, sick health." And this is Romeo's way of describing the contrasts in love and kind of how messy it is, but it kind of feels like it's not what Romeo really feels about Rosaline. It's not really something he truly feels, but rather something he may have read in poetry, and sorry about that. Romeo's love is not, we kind of get the feeling that this is Romeo's way of speaking about love and how he wants to feel this, but he doesn't really feel it yet. And but he's very sad though, and he's very tormented by Rosaline's rejections towards him, and she doesn't really respond to his approaches to her. And this is seen here in the same scene, line 204. "And in strong proof of chastity well armed, from love's weak childish bow she lives uncharmed." Now, when he's talking about chastity, this relates to a sexual affection, because she can't really respond to his approaches because she lives in chastity. Now, so Romeo's kind of view is more of a sexual view than rather a seeing the other parts of love. And so this is kind of like the childish way Romeo has with love at first. And this is, of course, Rosaline he feels this for, and we know that it's not Rosaline that is the main character of Romeo's affection, but rather Juliet. Now, he meets Juliet at this party, we already know, where he wants to meet with Rosaline. So what happens here is kind of the first impression we get of Romeo's love towards Juliet is that it's kind of untrue, because he just had this deep affection for Rosaline. So is Romeo's love towards Juliet really true? And we get this impression Romeo kind of lives up to this, the truthfulness of his love towards Juliet through the story, because he kind of matures in his love for her. So if we look at Act 2, Scene 2. Now this is after the party where they just kissed, and is at the balcony. And Romeo, after they kind of been speaking about love, he says, "Oh, wilt thou leave me so unsatisfied?" And Juliet responds, "What satisfaction canst thou have tonight?" And he says, "The exchange of thy love's faithful vow for mine." So this is not, if we look at the word leave us unsatisfied, satisfaction kind of has this ambiguous meaning of both being a loving satisfaction, but also a sexual satisfaction. But then he kind of turns this around as a loving satisfaction, because he wants the exchange of thy love's faithful vow, instead of just kind of wanting to be with her. All right, so we also see that Romeo, he doesn't only want to hook up with Juliet, but he also wants to marry her, and he wants to have a life with her. So this love is a lot more real than it was with Rosaline. And it's, yeah. So if we want to look at Romeo's development through the story, we can look at how his love changes. So his love was at first very naive, and then it develops into a more mature love where he really literally wants to die for the person he loves. And yeah. So we also want to look at Romeo's character besides the loving part, but rather the tragic fall that is the character trait that leads to his downfall. Now, Romeo's tragic fall can be seen as his impulsiveness, because we see by being a Petrarchan lover, there is an impulsiveness where he falls madly in love very quickly. But also we see this here where he kind of wants to adapt to the marriage with Juliet, where he had just married her, and then there is this strife between him, Mercutio, Benvolio, and Tybalt from the Capulets. And now he doesn't want to have this fight with Tybalt, but after he kills Mercutio, he impulsively kills Tybalt because he feels because he's he wants revenge for Mercutio. Now this is where the whole story changes, and there's this contrast between comedy and tragedy by this plot turn where Romeo gets he gets banished from Verona. So, and also his impulsiveness is seen in his death, where he finds Juliet lying there fake dead, though, but he doesn't even check with Friar Lawrence. He doesn't really check to see if she's really alive, but he just kills himself because he can't live without her. So, yeah. So in this story, in this historical context, there is the paradox between destiny and free will. So these characters have this destiny that has been foreseen by everyone, by the prologue, where we see that they're gonna die in the end, and even by Romeo himself in Act 1, Scene 4, where he says something about untimely death